Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help people step into their authentic realities, and we do that via a number of different modalities. This podcast is obviously one of them. We also have a Facebook group, and we'd love to have you join us there. It's a group of like-minded people committed to spiritual growth and transformation, and you can find us at liveauthentically.today/FB. And on today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Gabe Arnold. Hi, Gabe.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on my show. He is the founder and chief pencil sharpener, I love that, at Copywriter Today. And today he's going to tell us about a number of different things, his entrepreneurial journey and a number of things he does. But before we jump into all the details about Gabe and what he does and his story, I like to start off every show with the same question. And that question is, what does it mean to you to live authentically every day?
I love your question, by the way. And I've never been asked that on a show. So
what better show than the Live Authentically show to be asked that, right?
Exactly. For me, I think living authentically is being willing to be honest, even when it's risky. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that, that I focus on, because it's never pretty or easy or simple when you're honest with people. It's the initial part of it is always, or maybe not always, but often will feel like confrontation or feel like a challenge or feel super uncomfortable. But for me personally, I'm unwilling to go to bed at night if I haven't addressed things that are important. And so to me, living authentically is being willing to say, hey, I screwed this up and I need to make a change, or I don't understand this behavior, this situation. Can we talk about it? Or, whatever it is, I'd rather address it and have it all blow apart than not address it. Because I think that the only way that we can grow is if we're willing to address things. I think confrontation creates healthy circulation in our whole energetic being. Because if you don't work out or don't move, you're not confronting anything physically, right? You're sitting there doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of believe that across all the different spheres of our lives, that if we're willing to confront things, everybody has the opportunity to grow now or later. Sometimes it's later and in a different place, but that has not made my life super comfortable, but it's made my life have meaning. And that's what's important to me. And I really want to serve and help people. And so I can't tolerate not speaking up. So.
Right. That's a great answer. And I want to go back to the word, you use the word confrontation. And I think in our culture, our society, that word, people often have a negative association with it. Confrontation, to me, I think about, contentiousness and, and I think it's so important that, the people understand that we can deliver feedback in a way that is totally, amenable to both sides. It's a way it can be presented in a way, and it's all in the delivery, it's in the language, it's in the tone, it's in the approach, it's in the asking for permission, right? Is now a good time to give some feedback? Would now be a good time to talk about how this product went? I think all of that is so important, kind of the language and then the unspoken communication as well. And I think feedback is such a big piece of who we are, can add so much to every process. And like you said, it's just all about transparency, right? It's all about just putting yourself out there in an open, honest, vulnerable, transparent way, because that is really the only way. Then we're paving the way for growth, right? I mean, if we don't, then we're shutting ourselves off and living in a place of fear, right? We're tiptoeing around because we don't want to say the wrong thing, or we don't want to step on a landmine over here, or we're worried about how someone may respond or react. And then we're not in alignment with who we are, right? Then we're not living our truth. We're not speaking our truth. We're not acting in integrity with who we are and what we believe.
Yeah.
And like you use that analogy, you're talking about putting your head on your pillow at night. That is the best feeling when you've shown up as your authentic self every day.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody doesn't agree with you, but and I think that's the perfect segue to get into some of the questions that I have for you today. Just for our viewers and listeners, Gabe and I have been working together over the last 18 months or so. It's a little surreal for the roles to be flipped here. I'm interviewing Gabe, and I've actually had the pleasure of being a guest on his podcast a couple of times. But he, over the last 18 months, has been, I call him my one-stop shop for all my business needs. So he is my go-to person we started off with a small project, website design, everything. It just sort of blew up from there. He's my writing coach. He's helping me with my book launch, my long-term business strategist. e-commerce, podcasts. I mean, whatever it is, Gabe's the man. And if it's something that is outside of his realm, such as, legal or anything like that, he'll refer me. He's an expert at finding the right people. And one of there are many reasons why I love working with Gabe, but the number one reason, do you know what the number one reason is, just out of curiosity, and then I'll answer it for you? It's,
No.
number one reason I love being a great friend of yours, and the number one reason why I love working with you is because I can trust you. And I'd love to hear you speak about that concept a little bit, this whole idea of trust, being able to trust people, and how you know whether or not you can trust people intuitively, because I think that is just such a huge piece of the equation. I take a pretty hard line on that. That's a non-negotiable. If I can't trust you, we're not friends. I don't mean you specifically. I actually mean everyone. If it's someone we can trust, there's no reason in being friends. There's no reason to continue the business partnership. So would you talk a little bit about your experience with trust in general?
Yeah, it's a really well-timed question, and I didn't know what you're going to answer, but I'm not surprised. I try to be trustworthy, so I'm glad here I am.
Absolutely.
I'm reading a book that I forget where it was referred to me, because anytime somebody that I trust and respect refers a book, I read it. But I'm reading a book by Stephen Covey's son. His name is also Stephen Covey, but it's called The Speed of Trust, and it's helping me bring language around things that I've understood for a long time. So this is a well-timed, obviously serendipitous question from the universe, probably more so than us, right? But I've realized that I used to say that I trust people because I pay attention to all the details. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain that, and I'll explain in some better language how people can kind of apply this. But the way my mind works, I very quickly can absorb a lot of detail, and I can instantly see simple things. Like, I'll point out, I know some people will be hearing this on the audio version, it's fine, but behind Pam, there's a table with a lamp, and there's a little box, and the table is very organized and neat and clean. And I have been on plenty of shows where behind people is just a mass of mess. Where they just woke up and decided to come on camera and come on my show, or I'd be on their show. And that's not a negative. That's how they want to, if that's how they operate, it's fine. But that's just an example of, like, I can tell that, you show up organized and prepared, and, like, I've been to your home, obviously. And I can just tell instantaneously by the details of if it's somebody that I'm going to resonate with and somebody I can trust. And that's how I've always viewed it. But a better way to explain it, now that I'm learning even better language around trust, is that we trust people based on how they show up and what they do. And so if somebody says, I'm going to, come on this podcast at this time, and they don't show up, then I lose trust for them. Like, and that just is what it is. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that I can't trust them on that front. And so when you develop trust with people, it's because they've said they're going to do something and they do it. And then it's also because when they said they're going to do something and they don't, they come back and say, hey, I screwed this up, and here's what I'm doing to solve it. Because you're never going to work with perfect people. I'm working with another friend of mine, and I said, we're going to work hard on this and make it as perfect as possible. And that's just something I kind of said. And I don't say perfect a lot, but he's like, I don't work with perfect people, Gabe. He's like, I work with people that are continually improving. And I'm like, okay, we should be okay then. Because I just off the cuff said something about, like, we'll get it as perfect as we can. And that's what you're looking for in trust, is people that are continually improving on giving their word and keeping their word. Because they're never going to do it perfectly, but you have to step back to the 50,000 foot view, or, whatever analogy you want to use, and, like, step back and really get the full picture and go, like, overall, Pam is somebody I can trust. Like, she delivers on time. She does what she said she's going to do. I can trust her. Just because, and for comparison, like, if I come to your home next time and, like, there's shoes in the foyer all over the place from your kids, that doesn't mean, not that would ever happen, but that doesn't mean, like, because I'm going back to the details analogy, like, right. That doesn't mean that you don't keep a clean house. And just like if, and again, I'm just using that for a simple example. And if somebody misses a meeting with you, it doesn't mean you can't trust them. But if they cancel twice on you, then you can't trust them to be consistent. Like, you can't plan your life around that. And so I'm always looking at the big picture. on the whole, at the 80% or greater mark is kind of in my head where I'm looking for. Does this person kind of do what they say, show up? Are they responsive? And if you start to look at those details and look at kind of the granular level and then zoom out, you will figure out who you trust and why. So objectively viewing trust is getting good at getting into the details and zooming out, and getting into the details and zooming out. It's a balance of figuring out how to live in both of those worlds.
I love that. That's such a great answer. And yeah, I think it's so important. I just wanted to echo that. It's just, people who own up to their actions, right? It's people who say they're going to do something. Yes, we all have things come up. There may be reasons why we can't make good on the promises we've made, but it's about owning up and showing up and taking accountability and being responsible and showing up in an authentic way. And like you said too, you spoke to that kind of that old adage, actions speak louder than words. I always say, show me, don't tell me, right? Yeah, show me, show me. I'll know by your behavior how this is going to go, right? So if you're showing up consistently and like you said, just look for patterns, right? I mean, we all have things come up, right? It's called life.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect 100% of the time. And it's just, look for patterns and, and things become repetitive or, repetition, or there's kind of a, recurring nature to things. That's when it's time to take a closer look and ask yourself some deeper questions. Like, is this person's heart in the right place? Are we aligned? Are we the right people to work together? Does it make sense to go forward? Should we have a more open, honest, vulnerable, transparent conversation that could potentially, change the trajectory of this relationship in a good way? Maybe this rough patch could actually be a springboard and could catapult us both further in our journeys and solidify the relationship. So there are just so many things that can come out of open, honest, vulnerable, transparent conversations. So thank you that's a great answer.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about what you do on a daily basis. Much of what I have the pleasure of experiencing on a regular basis, but I would love to hear you explain it in your words. But before I do that, I always like to hear the chronology that led people to where they are. Did you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be this entrepreneur, I'm going to start this successful business, and then boom, you're an overnight success and here you are? Is that how it went? Or was there a different story?
Something like that. No. I always tell people it only takes 20 years to be an overnight success.
So let's hear about your journey. Let's hear about your first entrepreneurial or anything that led up to this point.
Yeah. So my grandfather was super entrepreneurial. He's still, he's long since passed on to a different energy plane, but he's hands down still my biggest daily influence of being who I am as a person and a leader and an entrepreneur. And he ran a large construction company, and I was not even close to academic as a kid. And even though I was homeschooled, I failed and dropped out of high school. And when your mom's your teacher and you drop out of high school, that tells you how different you are, maybe. But early on, like from 7, 8, 9 years old, my grandpa would come and pick me up by like 10:30 or 11 in the morning, and we would go out and I would work with him. So I'd ride around with him and look at jobs, or he would quote and sell things to people. We would check up on the construction crews, and then ultimately, a few years into that kind of arrangement, because he was my main caretaker, now that I think about it, at that age. My dad bought a piece of property, and my grandpa started building a house on it for him. So we would go out and lay block and stone and build all the masonry. His plumbing friends and electrical friends would be out there, so I'd have to help them. And I really, with my grandfather's kind of guidance and help, built with my grandpa and these other guys that he brought in, built my dad's house from the ground up. And that was over a course of like 4 or 5 years. And so I spent an extensive amount of time with him. I spent more time with my grandpa than anybody else, besides my best friend as a kid. I had one best friend and I had my grandpa. And so that was my early childhood. And then when I turned 15 and then 16, I started like working on side jobs and doing my own little masonry projects, or pouring concrete, or building or fixing whatever anybody wanted help with, because I always just said, oh yeah, I can do that, because that's how my grandpa was. And then I'd go figure out how to do it, or I'd call one of my grandpa's friends if I was stuck and didn't know what to do, or like I would bring in people to help me if I didn't know how to do it. But I always tell people, yeah, I can get it done, and I did. And also during that period, I got simultaneously, which was a weird kind of connection, but I got really heavy into technology. Like I built websites on GeoCities, which any nerds out there knows what that is, but that's a long time ago. And I built and sold my first website at 16 for like $3,000, I think. And I was like, holy cow, this is a ton of money for building something in the virtual world. Like it's not even real, because I'm used to like pouring concrete or building steps or doing like physical construction. And so that was a really important point for me, because I was like, man, there's this whole other world of things I can build and be creative with, and I don't have to necessarily have 50 guys to do it, or it doesn't have to be the same. So with that, I started building websites for my own company. I built up a multi-million-dollar construction company through my early and like mid-20s, and then in the housing market crash, because I didn't understand business very well at that level. Honestly, I was great at sales and I was great at building things, but there's a lot more to business than those two things. I had a couple clients get their credit lines dried up early in the housing market crash, which led to me not getting $250,000 in payments one month, which led me to go out of business because I had no financial control and couldn't recover from that. And so that was a really chaotic time. My best friend died, and I think he was only 23 or 24.
Oh, wow.
He died from medical complications that he had his whole life, but he passed away. And then like 8 months later, my grandpa passed away.
Wow.
And I had lost my business, and I got divorced. And and I went bankrupt for $1 million. So it was a really, really chaotic year.
Wow.
And a lot of it was compressed into like 90 days. So it was kind of like 90 days of hell. But as all that kind of burned to the ground, I realized, well, like, what did I like out of this? Do I need to go get a job? What do I need to do? So I did go get a job, because, you need to get a job and get back on your feet. But I was like, what I really liked out of it was the technology and the sales and the entrepreneurship and all the marketing and stuff is really how I built my business. So I went and learned a bunch of programming languages, like beyond what I had learned as a kid, for computers and stuff like that. I did a bunch of help desk support. I ended up building by myself, like design to coding to the whole thing, 1,000 websites on my own over the next few years. Went through a couple good and bad partnerships with people that I thought I should be in business with, and found I couldn't trust them, like we talked about earlier. But then finally landed. When I found out my son was going to be born, I was in Chicago for a few years, and then I found out my son was going to be born, and I moved back to Cleveland, Ohio, where I live now, to be closer to all my siblings, because I have 5 younger brothers and an older sister. And that's, after my son was born, that was definitely like the most pivotal moment in my life. That's what I'm alive for. Like, that's why I'm here. And on the same day that my son was born is when I met my partner and now life partner, Rachel.
On the same day, you said?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
So
what's the date? What's the date of that? Does it have any numerical significance?
I haven't looked at the dates. I'll have to look at those.
I'd be curious about that, if there's some, numeric significance to that.
Yeah. So, and I still have the voicemail from Rachel that day. So I saved that. And so it's super cool. Great. So that was really the turning point for me. Like, that's when I feel like I finally got it. And I realized that we're here on earth to make an impact. That's it. Like, we don't know how we got here. We don't know exactly what's next. Like, we don't have all the answers, but I do know what I'm here to do. And that's to make an impact on people's lives. And so from that point forward, I really it's been a slow process. I haven't learned this stuff overnight, unfortunately, but I've really shifted my focus to how am I serving and showing up for people on all fronts. So if you're in my family, how can I serve and support you? If you're on my team, how can I serve and support you and help you grow, which includes growing with us. And then there's plenty of times over the years where I've helped people grow into other positions that are better for them. And then obviously with all our partner clients, how can I help them get their message out to the world? And the second I shifted from how can I make a bunch of money today, which is sometimes what happens in business when we're thinking about like, how can I make money or get this stuff for me? Like, it's a natural desire, it's okay. But when you shift from that to who can I serve and help today, the universe opens up and everything's unlimited then. And it doesn't matter like anymore, because if you show up that way, everything works. And even when things are done, and you talk about this in your book, like even when your contract is ended, your soul contract or whatever, that energetic contract is ended, if you approach the whole relationship with how can I serve you and show up and support you, then when it ends, it's such a beautiful ending compared to, we've all had bad endings to relationships. Like, so we know what that is. So that's a long answer to your question. So.
That is an amazing answer to my question. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And like you talked about, when you changed your focus, when you shifted away from, how can I move out of that space from how can I make money? How can this benefit me to how can I serve others? You're shifting there from that ego-based place. And I say that without judgment. And we all have that part of our persona, but we're shifting from the ego to the soul. And when you're coming from that soul-based place, that place of serving humanity, of, that place of wanting to use your gifts and talents for the greater good, the universe will conspire with you, and it will just put the right people and experiences and things in your path at the right time. And everything will and there's a flow to it, right? There's an organicness, there's a naturalness when you're coming from the soul. Because that ego is what keeps us focused on wanting and needing, and nothing you just experience resistance. It's just like stumbling block over stumbling block. And it's usually a comedy of errors when you're coming from the ego, but it is in stark contrast to that coming from the soul. Everything just flows beautifully. And have you found that there's energetically just what you experience is so vastly different?
Yeah. The interesting thing for me is it's only been in the last 3 years that I've really tapped in energetically and spiritually, because I came up through a chaotic, not so good religious experience. And I don't think, my personal opinion is religion isn't good, but spirituality is great. And it's taken me a long time to understand that and like disconnect from human experiences I had and understand the energetic and spiritual experiences that we can have as humans. But when I started to shift and understand that, then everything, it flows and is easy, and there's no scarcity. There's no worry. Like when you actually start to live in the present moment, life is a lot richer, and there's still challenges, and like, there's still things you have to like work on, and it's not all easy, but it's better, I guess, is the way I would say it. And so shifting to thinking about what's the long-term impact that I'm going to have on this person based on how I'm interacting and what I'm doing. What's the long-term impact that, my family and the generations after me are going to have? What am I going to be remembered for? And it's not from an ego standpoint, but from what mark will I leave on the universe?
Right.
That's when you start to get in that perspective, like a lot of things are really insignificant then, and you don't even think about them anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot.
That's been a huge shift for me. And the doorway for me, or the gateway for me in understanding all this, was really intentionally starting to dig into and understand empathy more.
Okay.
I think when we're intentionally figuring out how to be empathetic in our day-to-day lives, then we act in such a different manner. And then we have such a high awareness compared to empathy is the opposite of selfishness and ego to me. Right. And that's for me what's unlocked everything.
Right. And that is something that just catapults you through the planes of consciousness when you're able to step into someone else's reality, and rather than judge, step into their reality and attempt to, there's no way to completely replicate, but just at least live in their space and at least see things from a different perspective. Open-mindedness is just such a huge piece of spirituality. It's understanding that everyone is coming at this physical reality from a different plane of consciousness, and the way that they see it may be vastly different than the way you see it. But hey, there may be more than one way to get to a particular destination, right? 0 + 5 is 5, 1 + 4 is 5, 2 + 3 is 5. There's many different ways to get to the number 5. And life just opens up and expands so quickly if we have that open mind, and come at things, like you said, through empathy and compassion. Was there a particular life experience that you had that prompted your desire to dig into empathy more?
It was more it was mostly an evolution, but um, a lot of it has come from me, like a lot of the hurt and pain I've experienced over the years, and like some really horrible things that people have done to me. Um, and in those moments, that's kind of like what I think in those moments. That's where I think about all the things my grandpa's taught me, because he always just by his actions taught me almost everything. And
Hmm.
I saw him experience incredible physical pain, over the years, and then obviously at the end, and really struggle with some relationships in his life and have people not be fair to him. And his reaction, his actions and reaction, in reference to what has happened, was always like, what can I learn from this?
Hmm.
And what was my part in this, and how can I get better? And so I think a lot of my empathy has come out of experiencing a lot of pain, and instead of allowing myself to get into the victim mindset, which we all can do, like it's
Right.
not hard to slip there. um, I started asking, like, what gift is the universe giving me inside of this pain? And I
Hmm.
started, um, I haven't thought about this way before, but I've I started realizing just what a gift pain is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And when you really treasure and value pain, then you can be empathetic towards yourself, and you can be empathetic towards others, and you can realize that people are going through really hard things, and you experiencing a little bit of physical pain or emotional pain, or things that don't kill you, honestly,
Right.
are really beautiful gifts of reconnecting to parts of yourself that maybe you didn't think about or work on before, um, or like connecting to what it might be like to be somebody that lives in chronic pain or
Hmm.
experience that type of loss. And when you start to just um, when you think about it in that way, then I feel like it's just natural. You have to open up to realizing, man, other people experience this,
Right.
and maybe they're experiencing it and they're showing up with a brave smile on their face today, and they're struggling. Or like, you just start to think about, what would it be like to be the other person?
Right.
So I think that pain has been hands down one of the best gifts I've ever been given. So
Hmm. Agreed. And I think that, pain can do one of two things to us. It can either make us really, bitter and harbor that victim mentality, that why me, or it can totally empower us. When we learn how to transmute pain, I think the real power is unleashed when we learn how to not only tolerate it or cope with it or accept it, but transmute it. There is a way to transmute pain into power. And when you can unlock that door, your upside is completely limitless. And I
yeah,
think that's the key, because we all have pain. We all have either are experiencing it now or have in the past, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, whatever. But there is the way to transmute that pain and turn it into power. And the other thing too, the other realization, kind of as you were talking, that I wanted to mention is that, like you said, there's such power in having empathy and stepping into somebody else's human experience. And most of the time, their people's reactions, we have to keep in mind, most of the times people's reactions are more about what's going on with them and have nothing to do with us. It's so easy to have the natural inclination to want to take things, to take things personally, right? Like it must be something that I did or I said. But most of the time it has nothing to do with you, how somebody has acted. It's more about the relationship that they have with themselves. And so
mm-hmm.
when you start to look at it through those lenses, I found, for me personally, I don't get triggered the way that I used to. I used to want to match somebody. If someone was angry at me, well, I'll match you there, and nothing good comes of that. Now we've just got two angry people. That doesn't get anybody anywhere. But it's more, then you realize, oh, anger. Well, if they're responding with anger and bitterness, that's that, fight or flight, right? That's, underneath that. That's that, fight or flight. There's something more vulnerable underneath that. If they're angry with me, they're feeling pain inside, right? There's a more vulnerable, they're, feeling, abandoned or hurt or stuck or some other vulnerable emotion. So I
Yeah,
think that was a huge realization for me.
yeah. No, the more you can observe before choosing your action instead of reaction, then you're going to be in just a better place. And the other thing that a couple of things that have just helped me along the way are, like, the more I dig into meditation, the more I can understand empathy, the more comfortable I am with where I am. And so that's a huge piece. And the other thing that I've been trying to do a lot more of, probably honestly just in the last year or less, is like just stating up front my intentions and telling people my intention in bringing this up is because I care about you, or my intention in bringing this up is because I want transparency in our communication, or like I just state my intention up front, because then that's a good way to continue to build trust with people, because you're pre-labeling what you're going to do. And it gives a much greater opportunity for them to trust you, because you're saying the reason my intention to bring this up is because of this. They can still misinterpret what you're doing, but the odds of that drop significantly because you just said, here's why I'm doing it. It's just super transparent.
Right.
So that's something that I try to use a lot. Like, hey, my intention in addressing this is because I love you, I care about you, I want to help you grow, or that just puts you, and it recenters you on what the work you should be doing. Not, I'm bringing this up because I'm frustrated with you today. Like,
right.
Not that you can't express frustration, but you can say, my intention in bringing this up is I want our relationship to grow. I want you to grow as a person. I care about you, and I am frustrated about these things, but here's why. It's a totally different interaction than I'm frustrated with you, Pam. I don't know why you did that. That doesn't serve anybody well, I don't think.
Right, exactly. And it's all about that growth. It shows your commitment to growth, and then it just completely opens up the conversation from there. So one thing I wanted to go back to, you talked about serving. You used the word serve a couple times, and I love that word. That's such a powerful word, because that's the word that shifts us into that space of being, heart-centered, soul-based, that place where we can truly connect with the universe and where it will conspire with us and meet us where we are and usher us to unprecedented levels and bring us unlimited abundance and energy, etc. What advice do you have for people, for entrepreneurs specifically, people who set out on the path of entrepreneurship, hoping to make a profit, maybe who have more of those ego-based objectives initially? And again, no judgment, but what words of advice do you have to help people start shifting the mindset towards that mentality of service?
That's definitely a good question, and it's something that I've constantly trying to improve on. I don't think I'm phenomenal at it yet, but it's something I spend a lot of time focusing on and working on. And I always tell people that entrepreneurship is servant leadership. That's all it is. And if you get that, then everything else is easy. Sometimes people think entrepreneurship is coming up with the next big idea, or striking something at the right time, or, getting lucky. Like, there's so many trends that we could look at in the last 5 or 10 years that happened that are gone and nobody cares and nobody knows. But what's not a trend is Southwest Airlines, because when they started, they said, we want to make this an amazing client experience, and we want to serve our customers and treat everybody the same, and in the worst time in the history of the airline industry, they grew year after year after year after year, because they said, we want to show up and serve people. So if you want to become, one of the giants and actually, make a huge business, the answer is just serve people. And when you realign with that, then everything else gets easy. Because if you're an entrepreneur, your job is to solve problems. And what is solving problems? It's serving people. And so that's the mindset and the approach that I have with it. The other thing that I try to tell people, and I don't know if I don't explain this well, or if it's just such a foreign concept that people don't get it, but I have connected with tier 1 and tier 2 entrepreneurs in many different spaces in one simple format. I tell people this all the time, and I don't know why people don't do it. If I see something I can help them with, I just reach out and say, hey, can I help you with that? I'm not going to charge you. I just noticed that this isn't quite right on your site. I'll just take care of it for you. Or, hey, I know you were talking about this. I have a connection there. You should go talk to this person. And when you show up like that, all the doors open, because it's refreshing and it's easy. And if you show up and serve somebody first, then you're totally good. There's nothing else you have to worry about. And so I have great connections, great relationships, because I just said, how can I help you with that? And then most of the time those people hire me, which is not why I'm reaching out in the beginning. I sincerely just want to help them because I like what they're about and I want to support them, or they send me tons of clients. And it's just the reciprocity in this, part of entrepreneurship is more important than, almost everything else. And the other thing I'll say that's related, because maybe this will help people understand a different way, is that the only bank account you need to worry about in business and in life too, but especially business, is your karma bank account. And so if you're out serving and helping people, that will come back to you 1,000-fold. Right. And so all you need to worry about is who you're helping today. And you do need to get paid for it. Like, you can't be in business and not charge anybody ever. But if you come in with the attitude first of how can I serve and support you, and you do things that you can maybe for free in the beginning, that's fine. And then maybe say, I can still continue to help and serve you at this level, but I do charge for that piece. Like, you can approach that in a really authentic way, and then everything's easy. And also related to that, you can't serve people if you don't know what you're doing. So like, you actually need to be good at your thing to serve and help people. And if you're not good, then go get a job and learn the skill and put your time in, and then be really good at it. Cause I'm not going to go to Pam for brain surgery. Like, I think she's an awesome person, but that's not her skill set. I go to somebody that's good at that. That I trust is competent with that skill. So it's, that's kind of the overall, how I look about it, how I think about it.
Yeah, that was a great answer. And just to echo that, you were talking about just reaching out to people and offering to help them without expecting anything in return. That spirit is totally in alignment with what the universe wants us to do. It's that unconditional, we talk about the term unconditional love all the time. There's an unconditionality to that, right? Not, I'm going to help you if you satisfy certain conditions, or I'm going to help you if you do certain things for me. I'm going to help you if you give something to me in return. It's no, I'm going to help you. It's a very heart-centered gesture. And again, the universe responds to that. And that's putting out a very different energy than, hey, do you want to trade services? Or, hey, do you want to, I can do this really cool thing for you, and I'll give you the friends and family discount for $100. It's like, that's a very different vibe than, let me just jump in and help you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you've experienced the success and the abundance that you have because of you're coming at it from a very heart-centered, very soul-based place.
Yeah. And just the way I think about it, I think of everybody as being one of my clients, because I super care about my clients, and I treat my team as my client too. I have to take care of them and serve and support them. And then, my family obviously is even way above that level, but like, how can I show up for them? And when you do that, then you instantly, or maybe not instantly, but over time, you will create this universe of people around you that trust you and support you and that you care about. And you can really experience an amazing life when you're connected to that level, instead of just, unfortunately, there's too many people that just stay at the base level of life and like,
right.
How can I make more money? What's in this for me? Like, you just are such a different plane that's just not enjoyable. You can't be happy there, I don't think, or you won't ultimately be happy there.
Right, exactly. And again, that's that ego place. And I don't say it with judgment, but that's just where ego tries to keep us rooted, right? And focused on possessions and things. And yes, we all need money for day-to-day living, et cetera. And it's nice. The universe wants us to experience abundance. It wants us to experience, have the things that we want to have, possessions, et cetera. But that needs to be balanced with soul enriching, soul growth-based activities, because that's where the long-lasting happiness and fulfillment is found, not in, earthly possessions or the next, the job status or the corner office or, what your bank account says. No, you can't take any of that stuff with you. The only thing that comes with you is your, your character, how you've treated people, your integrity, things like that. So I think it's so important to continually look either in our personal lives or our professional lives for places to make that shift into that soul-based place.
Yep.
So one thing I wanted to do next is I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about what you do kind of on a daily basis. I know every day is different, but just at a high level, what are some services that you provide to your clients, and how do you serve people? What are some services?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Copywriter Today is one that we talk about a lot. We will write people's blog posts, email marketing. We write people's ebooks. We'll ghostwrite for people. Some of the time, if they're not, a great writer like you who wants to write their own content. That's one of our main services that we honestly started a lot of our relationships with, because I feel like people definitely need to get the word out there about who they are, what they're doing, what their story is. And just because it's not your natural talent to want to write or use that medium doesn't mean you can't reach people that way. So that we've had that service for 6 years now. But overall, our company as a whole is a full service digital marketing agency. So we write the copy, we design websites for
Mhm.
folks. We come up with entire marketing strategies. Like we're doing a lot of direct mail right now for some wonderful clients that we're working with. And then from like a strategic consulting level, like what I enjoy doing with you for the right people, where it's a good fit, I come in and be either their remote CTO or be their business manager or things like that. So I do a lot of different things. My team as a whole is focused mostly on the kind of digital side, from like I said, websites to paid traffic, SEO, copy, all those things. And over the years, as I've built up and brought in the right people, we've got about 50 people on the team, and we're in a pretty big growth phase. So we're expecting that to probably double over the next 3 years.
Wow.
And the nice thing is, just to go back to the theme, or the important part is, like, when you really serve and help people and you invest in them, then you can turn them loose and let them run with their parts of the company. So I have amazing leaders that run all our different divisions and all the different things we do, and that frees me up to do the consulting and coaching that I like to do.
Mhm.
And then day to day, a lot of my focus or energy is in partnering with and recruiting and finding the right clients that we should work with, and then also coming up with the creative strategy and the ideas, because that's definitely my genius zone. What I enjoy the most is I can envision the whole plan, what it's going to look like, what we're going to do, and then I can plug it in, and then I can bring in the team members that are good at each area. So I spend a lot of time reading, researching, learning, testing things. That's my favorite thing to do. And then the rest of it, I have brilliant people that I get to work with that help me. So
You guys you're amazing to work with. Your entire team is amazing. Um, what is my next question is, what is something that you're challenged with right now, or what is one of the most challenging things that you have to deal with as an entrepreneur?
um, the hardest thing for me is that at every graduation point, I have to raise the standard and I have to challenge my team more. And so um, I wrote I can't remember, I think this went out already, but I wrote a post the other day about, um, the subject line was like, they're all your kids.
Mhm.
And uh, so I think of everybody on my team as my kid. I raised my 5 younger brothers. I have a son who's 8 going on 18. And parenting is something that, although I didn't experience it firsthand as a kid in a super positive manner, is something that's been super important to me that I really want to be good at. And parenting is my most important job. All the rest of this is details. But as I view entrepreneurship that way, I always think like, well, I'm the father figure in this organization in a lot of senses. I'm the founder and the visionary and have a ton of input on the direction. And I also need to challenge people to grow and improve and change, because otherwise I'm not being a good dad or a good leader or entrepreneur or whatever you want to title it as. And so the hardest thing for me is that I sometimes tend to give people grace longer than I should. And I'm all for giving people grace and space to grow and learn, but you also have to call it what it is sometimes and let natural consequences happen. I'm a huge believer in natural consequences when it comes to parenting, when it comes to leadership. Like if we were talking about examples earlier, if somebody doesn't show up, to a couple of meetings in a row, then the natural consequences is you're not going to book another meeting with them. Like, that's not vindictive. It's not judgmental. It's just the natural kind of path, a course of events. So the hard thing for me in entrepreneurship has been every time we step up to the next level, there's people that aren't a fit anymore, and our time, in our season together has to end. And that's, I don't like that part, but it's,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's what has to happen if you're going to continue to grow. And so that's always a challenge, but I'm unwilling to go to bed at night and know that I didn't do right by that person and doing right by whoever it is. Because this happens, periodically over the years with multiple people, whoever it is, my goal is to set them up for success or get them into a better place. And as soon as I realized, like, I have to do what's right for that person, for the team, for the company, despite this is the part of my job I hate the most, of like letting people go. Um, when I just committed to doing that in a loving and kind way, it opened up a lot of possibilities for everybody. And I immediately see a slingshot of growth for our team and for that person. So a couple of years ago, I think right before we started working together, I had to let go this wonderful guy that I worked with for like 3 or 4 months. Everything was fine. And then things changed. It wasn't a good fit. And I had to let him go like on the spot, which I hate doing that, but there was a few reasons for why that happened. And he was obviously upset, and nobody's happy in that situation. And I was upset that I had to do it because there were some performance issues. And a month later, I've never received this before, so it was crazy and something I'll remember for a long time. A month later, I got this long email from him that said, "Thank you so much for firing me. It was the best thing you could have ever done for me. I found my passion. I love it. I'm making great money. And I just thank you for being a stand-up guy and doing what was necessary." And
Wow.
like, that's not going to happen in your entrepreneurial career, by the way. I think that's weird. It happened to me, but it was nice to, I mean, maybe it can for more people, but it was nice to like get confirmation that I did the right thing, even though it really sucked. And it's because I really came at it from a place of like, I need to do what's best for everybody involved here. And so that's always a challenge, but that was a really pivotal moment that I won't forget because it solidified for me what I thought was true when you have to do that, to knowing that that's how you free people up to enter their true authentic self and their next plane, of growth. So that's always a challenge, but I have a lot more trust in doing it these days. So.
And I think when you see what helps too is when you see how these things play out over time, is that when you make these, like to call them healthy disconnections, there is a way that we can do that. It's all about changing our mindset around it. And, it can be a very good thing for you and a good thing for them. And it's all about reframing a situation, right? I mean, we can do this in every aspect of our life, whether it's in business or personal, in friendships, relationships, romantic relationships, whatever come to an end, there is a way we can reframe it. So rather than focusing on the end of this phase, let's focus on the beginning of the next phase for both of us. And that we're standing squarely in the doorway of, that opens up to a completely new room, empty space, and we can design this space to look any way we want it to look. So I think there is just such an art in reframing experiences that can help us see them through the lens of growth, when we might have otherwise allowed them to keep us stuck.
Oh yeah, a big thing I've learned a lot about recently in the last year or so is like I can assign any meaning I want to anything. So why not assign something good to it?
Right. Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. I love that. We've got just a few minutes before we wrap up here, but I wanted to go just a different direction here for a few minutes, because I wanted to kind of shift to a personal topic. I know you mentioned earlier that you met Rachel on the same day that your son was born, which I think is awesome. Tell me the date of that after the show, by the way, and then I'll do some little numerology on that and we can figure out significance. I'm very intrigued by that because, as we know, there are no coincidences in the spiritual world. Right. So you and Rachel, I think the relationship you guys have together is so beautiful. And I just think that it's templating this new age relationship model, which is this whole notion of conscious relationships. And for those of you out there who may not be familiar with a conscious relationship model is very, very different than that old paradigm, conditional, control, so to speak, based relationship model that is kind of falling away in this shift as we've moved through levels of collective consciousness. So you guys are the only ones I know who I know personally who embody this conscious relationship model. So I just think it's so amazing to sit back and observe. And I know that you've had other romantic relationships prior to this. What makes this relationship conscious? Because whether or not you've thought of it that way, whether or not you label it, I'm not big into labeling it, but it is. It's a conscious relationship. And that is like the holy grail of relationships in the spiritual world. So what about this relationship makes it conscious?
I would definitely say not necessarily due to much of what I've done. I do have the holy grail of relationships because I am with somebody incredible. So that's a good description. I think that it comes from a place of like pure intention for the other person. So, which I'll explain a little bit more. So, I've been divorced twice before, being with Rachel, and Rachel and I are not married, and in our current mindset, we don't plan to be, because she's not super big on the idea, but I am at this stage in my life completely against marriage as a concept, because I think it's just archaic. And we've talked about my origins theory, which I won't go into here, but I think the origins of marriage are not productive for our modern world, and the universe as it stands. But the reason that my relationship with Rachel is what it is because she chose a long time ago that she was going to show up for me no matter how I behaved. And that was the catalyst for me to realize that, oh, like I said something really, really mean to her, like a month after we'd met, or 2 months after we'd met. And any rational person would have left and never come back, or any normal person maybe. But she's will tell this story. She's told this story many times. She's like, I just realized that we didn't have to be friends, Gabe, that I was going to show up and be a friend to you regardless of if you were my friend or not, because we were just friends at the beginning. And like that blew me away, because I heard her feelings. She didn't talk to me for 2 days. I was pretty mean. And then she came back and she said, I decided to come back and I'm going to show up and I can serve and help you. And it doesn't matter if you want to be my friend or not. And not from like she wasn't being derogatory and saying that. She was just like, it's not relevant. I can still show up and choose to serve and help you. And that was probably the first time, or one of the few times in my life, but one of the most impactful times in my life, where somebody just said, I'm going to show up and help you no matter what. It doesn't matter how you behave or what you're going through, because I was going through a lot then. And so that she made the choice to be committed to serving and helping me, and has done nothing but that from day one. And I grew up eventually, within a year after that, and realized that if you want to have a good relationship with somebody, then choose that every day. So I choose to serve and support her and do whatever she wants to do. I'm for. We, in a really weird way, we have a relationship with no boundaries, which gives us tons of boundaries and protection. Because she wants to do something, like she's becoming a yoga teacher right now. I'm like, absolutely, go do it. If she wants, whatever she wants to do, she can do. I can support, because I trust her. I just trust her completely. And I choose to trust her too. It's a combination of like, she's trustworthy and I choose to trust her. And the same thing with me. Like, we have very healthy discussions and debates about things that we need to work through or think about. And she is phenomenal at challenging me, which is something I really, really need in life to be healthy. She'll challenge my decisions or ideas or thoughts. But she always ends it with, but I support whatever you want to do. I support you. You can choose what you want to do. So it's a really interesting, weird dynamic compared to, I've been married before to people I shouldn't have been married to. And so it's just really interesting. And then the one thing that I always tell people is that I only have one rule for the people that I'm going to be around, especially with my partnership with Rachel, but is that just treat me well. Treat you well. And like, if you don't know what that means, then you have some work to do. That's okay. But if you do, then that encompasses everything. Just treat me well. I just want to be treated well. That's, and I learned that from somebody that didn't treat me well. And then I guess the only other thing I'll say too is that I was talking to a friend a couple years ago, and he's like, he went through a tough divorce, and he said, I realized after going through just a really bad relationship, he's like, I didn't know what a good relationship was. It's like, but I knew what a bad relationship was. And he's like, so if I can achieve the opposite of that, if I can say, here's what I won't stand for, then I'm at least headed the right direction. And so sometimes we have to take the negative stuff that we've gone through, or the bad relationships, and use that as our, the thing that we can move away from, and just like honor it and be grateful for the negative time you had, because then you're like, okay, I know I don't want to do that again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's those relationships. I mean, no relationships are ever a waste of time. We can always learn something about ourselves, and they can help us find our voice and step into our truth and come into better alignment with who who we are. And as you talked about your relationship with Rachel, I was just jotting down a few notes, and there are just so many hallmarks. See, I knew it was a conscious relationship. There are just so many hallmark characteristics of conscious relationships that you hit on. You know, feelings are shared openly and freely, and you know you won't be judged. Practicing love as a commitment, you know, being kind, treating me well. You know, those are all hallmark. You know, you practicing love as a commitment every single day, and particularly the unconditionality of it. You know, when she said, I'm going to show up regardless of how you act. And yeah, it may be tough in the short term, but I'm here for you no matter what. I mean, that's the highest form of love there is unconditional love. It's not, you know, it's not my behavior is I'm going to behave in a certain way that's contingent upon what you do or you don't do. No, it's I'm going to show up and love you no matter what. And that is such that's such an important part of a conscious relationship. And again, that freedom that you have that foundation of trust, which allows you to give each other the freedom that you wouldn't normally give each other if there weren't that element of trust in a relationship. So I'm just so happy for both of you. Rachel was actually the first guest on my show. So I'm super, super honored to have interviewed both of you. Maybe someday we'll do a couple interview. Can we do that?
Those are fun. She has a lot of good things to say.
We'll do that. I think we can go a little deeper here. I think we can draw out some really good stories. So anyways, we are just about wrapped up, but I just wanted to give you one last opportunity. If there's anything else you wanted to say to our audience, if you wanted to maybe let them know how they can reach you, if they want to get in touch with you directly.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at copywritertoday.net. You can learn about kind of, like I said, one of our flagship things that we offer there. And I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the places. Just search for Gabe Arnold and it comes up with my face and you'll see me there. So.
Sure does. All right. Well, Gabe, thank you so much. It's been such an honor to have you on my show. And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you for being here. As you know, I believe that time is a choice. So I'm so grateful that you've carved out an hour from your day to listen to our podcast. And again, would love to invite you to be part of our Facebook community. We can be found at liveauthentically.today/FB. Hope you all have a great day.